Founders, traction is everything for your startup. Investors don't want to hear about what might happen. They want to hear about what is happening. And our guest is a 3 times female founder, and she'll show you how to scale your business with traction that works for you and your startup. Stay tuned for the Startup Life Live show. Let's glow, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life Live show. I'm your host, Ande, Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I now share founders' startup stories to help newly minted business owners find the solutions and inspiration they need to keep going and succeed. And so thank you for carving out time to tune in and up your founder game while cheering on a fellow founder. Because, there could be a new resource, a tool, a solution can be found while hearing a founder's startup story. And if you're joining us live today, please share a yoo-hoo in the comments. I love a good yoo-hoo. And if you're watching the replay, please share #replay in the comment threads, and I'll respond with a yoo-hoo for you. If you like the founder stories and gems that you're soaking in today, please share this video with your tribe, your community, or on your feed. And thank you for sharing your love on this video wherever you're hanging out and watching the show from. However, if you're tuning in from YouTube and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would love your subscriber love, and be sure to click on the bell icon for alerts. Thank you. Here's what happens. Your love, and your subscriber love helps us reach more first-time founders. And as a result, you're helping them maximize the joy and minimize the heartache from the startup journey. So I am so excited to introduce you to the queen of Get Shit Done, the one and only Alex Batdorf. Let me read you a little something about her, because she's doing it all. Alex is a 3 times entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Get Shit Done, the Superpower Scaling Sidekick, supporting women entrepreneurs in gaining traction to build scalable companies on their own terms. And prior to founding Get Shit Done, Alex was co-founder and CMO of ZipFit Denim, a venture-backed e-commerce company that was acquired in 2019. I know we're going to get some great stories from that experience. Now, to help women founders secure more than 4% of annual business revenues, Alex created the Superpower Scaling School, a short traction-packed online courses teaching you how to gain traction and grow on your terms. And she also created this incredible 7-week virtual traction-focused accelerator program that helps female entrepreneurs building scalable businesses gain and grow traction to put them on a path to building scalable businesses on their own terms. Now, you and I both know how much we love the own terms, because there's so much stuff out there about how we should be scaling. And what I love about Alex's work in the world is she tailors it for you. Let's bring her into the room with a hello and a hi. Welcome, Alex.
Hi.
We're going to just do a little bit of this because we love to celebrate our guests. We are going to learn so much from you. I mean, you have done it all, and now you are serving other women founders, because along the way in your adventures, which we're going to hear about, I'm sure you ran up against some walls and some feelings of being invisible. But before we get started, where are you hailing from today?
New York.
All right. I'm right up the road from you in Boston. And, we see glimpses of the warmer weather happening here. But Alex, your whole background is marketing, branding, vibing with the tribe, so to speak. What happened? What compelled you? What called you to go into the world of entrepreneurship? As we say at the monthly pitch event I co-host, is we always like to go, what's the matter with you?
Yeah.
What is your startup story, Alex?
Yeah, I'm not the person who, I didn't have a lemonade stand as a kid. I didn't deliver newspapers. I wanted to be an entrepreneur until I got to college. And I didn't have any formal jobs. I've actually only been an entrepreneur my entire career. I've never worked for anybody. And probably every coach and therapist I've had would probably say I'd be a terrorist to work under anyone, anyways. So I just continue building companies. But a lot of that came from my love of serving people since I was a little kid. So, one of the things when adults would ask me when I was younger, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would reply with, well, I'm going to rule the world. And, a lot of adults just thought I was like, oh, haha, this kid's really cute, but I would have a very serious face on. And my poor mom was like, oh my God, they're going to think my kid's crazy. But at that time, ruling the world to me wasn't Hitler style. It wasn't about dominating anyone. It was about how do you serve the world. And, through that, I thought, well, maybe I want to be a doctor one day. And fast forward, I get to school. I'm there for a week in undergrad. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's not what I meant or what it felt like. And, that led me to my first startup. And I think what's really important here is that timing is also really important when it comes to startups. That's not talked
Yeah.
about enough. You can have, I mean,
Oh,
but the founder of the Real World, she had, what was it? Not pets.com. It was a company before that. And I think it was pets.com. And they were basically doing what Chewy did years before Chewy, and Chewy had a much bigger exit and valuation. They ended up failing
that's right.
because the timing. She was doing it in the 90s and the early 2000s around the dot-com bust. And
Well, my .com was in the college market. We were doing live streaming. We were doing YouTube. We were doing Facebook, but it
yep,
was 1999 and 2000.
yep,
That's never going to happen. There were companies that had the ability to use the GPS feature in the Motorola and no Motorola, no cell phones that we had, but they never turned them on. So companies that wanted to help runners track and do all those fun things couldn't do anything till 2006. So you're absolutely right. We do not talk about timing enough. Thank you.
yeah, we don't talk about that. And, you can have the best idea. And there's so often where, when founders come to me and like, I have no one else is doing this. I'm like, it's been done. It's been done or it's being done. Like the only difference, there's not really anything new. The only difference is how you execute. And
Right.
when I was looking at starting my first company, a lot of that had to do with I got into undergrad in 2008. It was one of the worst economic recessions.
Yeah.
And the timing of that was very essential when we talk about it, because my class, we started basically the entrepreneurial bug at University of Chicago, which was my undergrad, because we came in and we were like, all of this is bullshit. We were fed a lie. We were told that you're going to get a piece of paper, you're going to be secure, you go to these fancy ass schools and then you're all okay. And mind you, I still got a lot from the connection. I went to one of the top schools in the world. Let's not get it twisted. I got a lot from the network. However, we were told you would have economic security. That was kind of the lie.
Sure.
Oh, and you get this higher education, you get this piece of paper. I always think of like Kanye West, college dropout. He talks about that. And I think a lot of the folks in my class, at least the ones that we were in this entrepreneurial club together, we were just like, well, basically, quite frankly, fuck this. We were told this was going to happen, and we obviously need to, figure it out for ourselves. And we started just thinking bigger. And, at that time, entrepreneurship, we saw the Facebooks, we grew up with them, we grew up with the MySpaces, and
Yeah.
about what can we do to create value in our moment right now. And that led me to my first company. I was really into fashion. I was really into thrifting when I was in high school. One of I call her my auntie. She's my good family friend. She's a very successful female entrepreneur in Washington State, where my family's from, and owns this amazing cookie business. And there was two things that I learned from her. First of all, context matters. I'm a sociologist by nature. I think in context and connections all day. The first thing is I had an example of what it looked like to be an entrepreneur, but not only an entrepreneur, a woman, and a Black woman. That was very rare. Like, I mean, that's rare today to see someone who is doing that well. And she was a part of my orbit. So my first idea of an entrepreneur was her. And she she was very frugal. She went thrifting. She did all this stuff. And I got fascinated by it. And, when I finally went and did it, I was like, whoa, I like having my own canvas. I like being creative. Yeah. I'm also very much a creative person. And so fast forward, I get to school, I go thrifting a lot. My roommate, who is really one of my good friends, who would later become my first co-founder, women used to come up to us all the time, thinking we spent all this money on our clothing. We looked fashionable, which was not very hard at University of Chicago, which is one of the geekiest places on earth. I love it for that. But we stood out like sore thumbs. We had all these women coming to us saying, hey, can you take us thrifting with you? And it was a whole thing. It was like, we have studies, we have to do all this. But I remember we came back from one of our thrifting trips one day, and we're sitting on the 6 bus. If you're familiar with Hyde Park, Chicago, shout out. The 6 bus was the only option for us to get to and from campus. And so we're talking about, what are these women really saying? And I think one of my superpowers as a founder is I am a connector. I think in connections all day, whether it's people, whether it's systems, whether it's context. I just know how to.
Boom. You're seeing those dots and the line that's coming between them and happening
all the time. And so we uncovered, like, A, these college women were saying, hey, I want new fashionable clothing, but B, I'm a broke college student. I also see I have a surplus of stuff I'm not using anymore. Right. So it's like, hold on. Why don't we create a platform that enables these women to swap clothing?
And we weren't even talking about upcycling then, or thrifting.
It was for the real reals. It was for the tradesies and the Poshmarks. It was probably like a year and a half before. And so fast forward, we start developing it out, and we were like, well, why don't we make this gaming? And this is before we even had the vernacular to say cryptocurrency. We were building out a virtual currency for women to opt into, and kind of like a Candy Crush for those games. You buy for credits, right? And it was just we thought that would be a really cool gamified approach to it. And for us, it served the market in the sense that we could serve these women that wanted to express themselves, but also serve in terms of what we now know of the circular economy. Right. And fashion is one of the second largest pollutant, I believe.
Oh, right after cows.
Yeah, it's so bad. And so it's like, well, let's just keep this thing. That's what I loved about thrift stores. It's like, there's always treasures that you can just upcycle and you can keep going. Yeah. But that was my first time as a 19-year-old CEO. I didn't know shit. Like, it was great though. I learned different of what to do and what not to do. What I learned not to do, at least for me, I usually don't see this work really well, is going into business with friends. But also, I did some really great things well. Like the first time I ever pitched an investor, I did recruit a really great CTO, but it inevitably ended up failing. But I learned a lot, and it also then connected me to my next startup, ZipFit.
So that prepared you, and it prepared the landscape. I just love it. And I got to tell you, folks, I have some Stuart Weitzman boots I bought for $35, which is practically free. I get so many of my clothes through thrifting. I love it. It's just so great.
Yeah.
I'm going to just say hi to over there in the Cotswolds, and the woman who creates all my beautiful graphics, Nikki Pasquier. If you want someone to create your brand elements and your brand look, reach out to Nikki. And Anna Maven, who just had her 9th annual conference. It was virtual this year. She is a Boston fave, the Maven's Women's Conference. Anna, that was so beautiful. And yes, great points. Timing and execution is everything. Hi, Ted from Phoenix. I know this is the beauty of Alex, is she just puts it right out there with complete, authenticity, transparency, and candor. Hey, Big Baby, how are you? Yes, it's the trifecta that Alex had. And of course, Big Baby wants to know, any thrifting tips?
Any thrifting tips? Honestly, go in there understanding. I was also, of the many different things I did, and we can talk about this at some point, how you fund your startups initially, is I worked like 2 to 3 jobs. So one
gosh, yeah.
Jobs was, and this was in undergrad. I was a full-time student. But I became a stylist at some point, and I just understood how bodies worked. So it wasn't about going after the trending thing at that moment. It's about finding something that works really well for your body.
Right.
That is timeless. Anything that looks good on your body is timeless. Hear about the little black dress, because a little black dress for so many women, depending on the shape, can look amazing no matter what. Like trends can come and go, but if you can find something that looks and fits really good on you, it doesn't matter when it was created or what the look is, it's going to look good regardless. So that's, I think, the biggest thing. People will
Yes.
for the trend of it. Ooh, this is a great pattern. This is a whatever. But I'm like, but do you feel good in it? Because that's essentially what it is. It's like people walk out and they feel good in whatever they're wearing.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter about the actual.
And I am not surprised, Alex, the queen of Get Shit Done, that you were jamming at school full time, jamming at a couple of jobs. You are a highly motivated, driven person who thrives with that going on. That is your jam because you manage it, you thrive in it, give you a little too much quiet time, and you're not going to feel good about yourself. I'm just
best thing I will say. I will say, being a hyperachiever, perfectionist, restless, like there's these really good God, what is it? I can send it to you after and you can link it to your community. But one of my top things is like it tells you what are your kind of your downfalls as like who you are. And one of mine is that I'm a hyperachiever and I'm restless. So I'm always looking for stuff to do. The issue when you're an entrepreneur and you're growing things, like burnout is real. And I think the issue with startup culture and entrepreneur culture is this hustle and grind like idea. Will.i.am has a beautiful metaphor he uses. He's just like, I don't get hustle and grind culture. He was like, you wouldn't want a horse named Hustle. You want a horse named Lightning. You wouldn't want a car named Grind. You want a car named Smooth. So why in the hell would we want that for humans? And I feel the same. Like, I am not a proponent of hustle and grind culture. It's stuff I still have to check myself on. The restlessness is real. I think there's a difference between being motivated and then running yourself into the ground, which I have done. So I do not. I'm not a proponent of that.
Well, I'm having this Andelicious moment, Alex, because having had a .com, right? I had 2 young children at home. I had a darling husband who I was running the .com with. Yep. Lots of dynamics happening there. And Wired interviewed me, and I said, just so you know, this .com culture is not sustainable. It was created by like 26-year-old kids out of college, mostly men.
Responsibilities. Yeah.
Yeah. With 0 responsibilities and accountabilities and no relationships. So that could not, be sustained in any way, shape, and form. And that's it. We do so much glorifying of the hustle, of the work. I'm successful because I work all night. What? I'm not successful.
Days for 10 years. And I'm like, if that's the case, you're not doing it right. Like, you're just not. I don't think you should, in my opinion, I don't think going into business and having your business run you is it's not sustainable. I think there are moments and seasons in your business where you do have to hit the ground running and you do have to put in those extra hours. That was us. I mean, literally a couple months ago, for probably a month straight, I was doing like 18-hour days. It was insane. But I also had a goal in mind, like that's not going to keep going past this point. Once we do this launch, that's not going on anymore. But that's right. But I've had to intentionally over time because I know what it's like to run yourself into the ground as a founder. And it doesn't matter. I find it interesting when founders talk about the value proposition in their business. They're like AI, tech, VR. And I'm just like, who cares? Like, the most valuable asset you have in your company is you. The people behind it, the talent. You can have the best AI in the world. None of data, like tech doesn't work without data. Data only comes from people. So
you best be connecting.
It's always going to be the most important.
Oh, and Alex, I wrote this post on Medium called, when your loved one is not an entrepreneur, and it starts off with, "Are you getting hate mail?"
Right.
And I'm not talking about customers. I'm talking about your family members and friends. Like, where the F are you?
Yep.
So it's really hard. So I'm so happy that you brought that up. But, so when you were bringing your denim company, what was the name of that again?
ZipFit Denim.
ZipFit. How'd you come up with that name?
So I joined as a co-founder. And while I was building my last company, one of my long-term mentors to this day, who is also one of the top angel investors in just the nation. And he had seen me through my first company and knew I was looking to build the next thing. He had met my former co-founder when she had pitched it somewhere, and he asked her, "Hey, what do you need now?" And she was like, "I need a co-founder that does X, Y, and Z." And he's like, "Hey, I have the girl for you." And I was just coming off of building that former company and figuring out what I would do next. I was about to graduate from school. So we met. I really loved what they were doing, another fashion tech company. Developed algorithms that match people with their best fitting designer denim. We did not create the denim ourselves because
no, so you might have, not your daughter's jeans to
brands, because the issue with e-commerce, I mean, it's still a massive issue, is returns. And what we saw in the market, the fit, the reason we went with fit is that e-commerce companies are seeing on average 40% returns. And a lot of it is attributed to the thing didn't fit me. And it's expensive for the company. It is a pain in the ass for the consumer. Like, you have to go drop something off, and then you might just let it sit, and then you can't even return it anymore. So we're like, let's not create something new. Let's just figure this problem out. And by doing that, I mean, our technology was able to reduce, on average, our return rates were 6%. And mind you, we tailored in-house, and we would have consumers, they had 30 days to return, even if it had been customized. And we still had a 6% return rate. And of the 6% that was returned, we could still resell 80% of that. So it was awesome. For us, it was about, again, how do we serve, for me as a founder, it's about how do we serve the consumer in the best way possible. And the way we saw it was, people spend so much time in their day fitting into stuff. Let's just give them a moment in time where something actually fits them. And clothing is such a pain point for people. Denim in particular is, I think most people have a horror story. And so we're like, let's get that right. And then let's templatize that across other product categories.
That's great.
So yeah, that's how I got into that.
I love that. And we're going to dive deeper into that a little bit later, folks, especially understanding, the whole pitch process, what Alex has, learned through all of that. But right now, I want to talk a little bit about when you launched Get Shit Done, because so far in the conversation, I really see, as far as connecting the dots, that you do love to serve, and you do love to have a wow experience, not just a great customer experience UI, but you want like some satisfaction. You want them to be delighted, and I don't know, just feeling like that there's this feeling that you're looking for that's unlike what I usually hear for folks. So it makes a lot of sense that when you saw your own struggle with another female founder and with your own two businesses there, that you wanted to help women in this particular lane, which is the get traction. And again, we go back to the busting mythologies, everyone, of entrepreneurship, which is right now, we're seeing it everywhere, whether you're on Clubhouse, Twitter, anywhere. It's all about raising the money and how much have you raised, and raise, VC, VC, VC. Hello. I'd like to see someone put up a thing that's like you do, Alex, which is traction. Hello. How can I serve and help founders do that? Because at the end of the day, traction is queen. What was it about this part of the business model that really spoke to you, and you said, this is how I'm going to really help, especially female founders?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to, for me, I think in context and systems all day and how to connect those dots. So as we were scaling my former company, we had raised capital. We had, gotten to a good amount of revenue, raised a good amount. And I was starting to see, the more we were scaling up, I also started seeing there was less women at the table in most, areas that are male dominated, especially in tech, but in general, in leadership positions and quote unquote success positions, there is a disproportionate or ratio in terms of women that are represented there. And I noticed there was two really loud narratives happening at the same time that would just irk the hell out of me. The first was, it's so hard for women entrepreneurs. And then there wasn't really tangible solutions being offered to back that up. And for me, I don't really, one of my sayings is like, I don't like to sit in my own shit. wrong. Like, it's okay to like smell it, like, oh, this is not great, I don't want to be here. But we need to, like, what are we going to do, right? And the follow-up with that, if the solution was always people saying, well, if women just got investors, everything would be fine. And I'm just like, stop. And the problem for me was that often we hear most women entrepreneurs, if they're familiar in this space, most female entrepreneurs know 2%. They know the stat 2% of funding currently goes to women entrepreneurs. And there's this uproar and this cry, like, that's not right. And you know what? It's not right within that context. Absolutely. But if you zoom out, that's 2% of less than 1% of funding that goes to any entrepreneur. So fundamentally and systemically, that is not the barrier for most businesses. Institutional capital is not the problem. And if you look even deeper for women entrepreneurs, and our motto at Get Shit Done is actually fuck 4%. And we say this not to be cheeky, not to just like be wow in your face and bold. It's because we want to reshape the narrative on what matters for any business, especially for women, is that women make up nearly 50% of entrepreneurs, and our companies only bring in around 4% of total business revenues.
Say that stat again, please.
Women make up nearly 50% of entrepreneurs, and our companies only bring in around 4% of total business revenues. I don't care. Like, at that point, the topic of funding is not even in our, or it should, like, that shouldn't be the priority, because even if you were of the less than 1% that would actually get funding, you would not even be in a position to get that check because you haven't de-risked the investment. So the best thing that you can be doing in your business to have optionality, to scale on your own terms, is to focus on traction. What is in your control today? What is in your toolkit today that you can do to build up momentum, to prove that there's demand here, prove that there is a business model here, instead of waiting on a hope and a prayer that someone's going to bail you out of this? Because a check is not a business model. That doesn't sustain. Because if you haven't figured out your business model, you can get a check, but you'll just, like, one of my favorite sayings is like, you can get a check, you'll just need another check. But if you have a strategy, you can pull yourself out of it. So that's what I think became a really like roaring cry for me, because in my scaling journey, I've been doing this over a decade now. I've been doing it since I was 19. I'm 30 now. And I just saw like the system, and I'm like, women are staying stuck. We're staying stuck because we're being fed narratives that are not necessarily the problem we need to be focused on. The problem we need to focus on, and the thing that's going to uplift all of us, is if we focus on developing traction in our business. Because once you get to that table, it's not a matter of asking for a check. Now it becomes a part of a partnership. They're going to want to invest in you if you have an investable company. But women are getting stuck in the system because we don't have the support in getting us through right now. And that's why we focus on traction, because that's important, as you know, Ande, in any business.
Absolutely. I got two things here I got to do, Alex. One is, a check is not a business model, everybody. Okay, I'm going to say, stitch that on a pillow, put it on a mug, hang it in your office. It means nothing if you're not getting to the point of sustainability and profitability. Yes. And also, I just want to say, preach it, because if we focus continually on the problem, there will be no solution. and traction is the solution, folks. We know for a fact, for low money, that we can do an MVP. We can figure out the minimum viable product that you can bring to market, get some feedback on it, kick it around, be ready and flexible to pivot, to have your customers give you feedback, but get that traction, because that is what lifts your business up. And that's what not only makes you attractive to investors, but it keeps ownership of your business. Because now, before, where you were going to give, and you've seen it on Shark Tank, they want, 20, 30, 50% of your business. Forget about it. When you do what Alex is showing us today, you will be able to say, hey, I'll give you 5% maybe. And no, you don't have a seat on the board.
It's a very, I think the the justice. I always find it funny when people make fun of people who are quote unquote social justice warriors. And I'm like, I love that name. Okay, whatever. I am a warrior for social justice for women entrepreneurs because in my opinion, there are people that do start or not even startups. They might use a side hustle as, extra cash. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's beautiful. But the majority of women, at least the women we serve, is they're saying, I want to build a legacy. I want this to be a legacy for my family. I want to give back to my community. I want to build wealth. And honestly, for me, I feel like entrepreneurship is one of the key wealth drivers for getting underserved communities out of the wealth gap. And so how do we make sure that we're able to serve and support women entrepreneurs in the way that they can mobilize this vehicle to bridge that wealth gap? Because it's insane to me that women make 80% of purchase decisions. We know how to make money work for everybody else, but for some reason, the system that eats off of us does not support us. So we need to shift that narrative because we know how to make money work. So how do we make it work for us? Because that means that we build a legacy that we want. That means that our families have a legacy and something we can pass down. And it means that we can give back to the bigger picture. But if women are stuck at 4%, that's not an option for most of us. And it breaks my heart that we are busting their butts every single day.
Well, and Alex, from having your groups that you do, that women are stuck in the indoctrination of, I just need to work harder.
I just need to work hard. No. Oh my
God. No. You got to leverage people. You got to get people in and do more work so that everybody can help you as the conductor rise this business up and get the revenue you want. I just want to say thank you, Anna. I know this conversation is amazing. Nikki, absolutely. Work smart, not hard, as we say here in Boston. Not smart. Work smart, not hard. It's perfect. LinkedIn user, I don't see your face, but I got to tell you, I love the fact that you're joining us today. And good point about the importance of strategy. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been one gem after another here. And yes, brilliantly said, #go Alex. Yay. And preach it. I'm right there with you, Anna, on this. And Alex, this generational wealth, Mandela from the founder of Founder Gym was just talking about this on her IG feed the other day about creating the wealth. And folks, wealth is going to be subjective. We again get indoctrinated with the unicorn. No, we're just saying, why not build 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million? You can have a nice, profitable business that you can manage with a great team and hit some good numbers there. Nobody's asking you to do an IPO. Nobody's asking you to do all this. We're just asking you to shift. So let's talk about that, Alex. How do you get folks? And you've got these great programs. I love that you took time out and created the wonderful online program where folks can just take themselves through and understand what traction is for them. The self-teach, but your accelerator program too. Look at these numbers. Look at these stats, these receipts that Alex has from her groups. This is amazing. Increased revenue, 5,000 in 30 days, inked 40K in deals, achieved 60% conversion from free to paid users, on and on and on. Phenomenal. So talk about how you brought these to life and what you've learned by helping women get through and get these receipts.
Yeah, great question. So when I took a step back to say, traction is the most important thing, is that in any business, even in my former business, and we raised capital, I remember we had that mindset because the end of the day is we're all products of the same system and we're all breathing in the same bullshit, unfortunately. Even though you might know better, it's like, wait, I have to check myself. And at some point, I remember we got screwed over by a lead investor and we were so focused on raising the check. And I mean, we had to Airbnb out our places. Thank goodness we had partners we could go and stay with. It was a rough time. I remember Bank of America sent me the notification, your balance fell below $25 multiple times. And we were so obsessed with, we need to close the check. We need to close the check. And at some point we were when we shifted away from how do we get that interest and keep this business going, is that we needed to sell. We needed to serve our customer. The number one investor you're ever going to have is your customer. And if you're not serving them, there is a fundamental problem. This is not a business anymore. Ponzi scheme. So for us, that was the moment where we were in the middle of Chicago, polar vortex, below 30, and we had an unheated storage unit. We had to move out of our store at the time, throw all of our inventory, the little that we had. And whenever an order would come through, because we had shifted from doing pop-ups as like our R&D to fully moving online to e-commerce. So it wasn't coming in as frequently as foot traffic. And every time an order came in, I remember just going in and we would just have to pull inventory. It was freezing. It was cold. And it could just be for one jeans per day, one pair per day. But I think as we started seeing that momentum and we served, we saw those numbers going up and going up. And I think that helped me in particular shift my mindset of how can we make sure that we're creating more everyday investors, our customers, to be able to make this happen, because that was more invigorating to me, was seeing those orders come through. I mean, even when we were in the millions, it was like, I love seeing orders come through. I love to look and from, Barcelona and then San Francisco and, someone from Austin, that got me excited. And so, I knew from that moment too, that shift when we were able to get through that trove. I mean, we had investors who had pulled out because we had to leave us, and it had nothing to do with us. Right. It was because they overpromised. We had investors who were pissed off from us, and they just basically said what investors will say, I'm making this go to zero, meaning that they're writing it off as a fail. Yeah. And there was a big VC fund in New York that particularly, they had invested in things like bonobos, and they were like, this is not going to work. And a year later, because we got traction back up, this person, the managing partner at this fund, personally put in his own check, because he was like, how in the hell did you guys pull this off? Because we were so fixated on traction at that moment. It was what we said, sell or die.
Yep. You took your focus that you'd been putting on getting the check, and you shifted it, and that incredible, powerful focus on getting traction, and the world exploded for you. And you were able to prove to these people and have them come in and say, we're ready to write a check. And viewers, newsflash, MailChimp, no investors. They bootstrapped from day one. So when you listen to Reid Hoffman constantly pushing the mythology, with all due respect to his podcast, the mythology of, you got to have VC because then you can scale and exit. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, but you also have to realize, again, context matters. Reid has a specific, he has his own fund. So it's in his best interest. Be very mindful of where you get your information from. I remember he actually interviewed the one of the founders of MailChimp, and I was actually really disappointed. I was really disappointed by that interview, because it seemed as if every time they ran into a problem scaling MailChimp without funding, he would then reply back to, well, if they just had VC. And I'm just like, no, so be very mindful of who you're getting information from.
I remember that. I'm going to put that link into the show, because that's what got me going.
Because I think Reid is a genius. I think that he's done some fascinating, amazing work. They put out great content, but you also have to realize, again, one of my friends says this, one of my favorite sayings is there's only 12 spots on the Pistons. If you look at the stats, the thing that we tell our founders is understanding how to choose how you want to scale on your own terms is the most important. Right now, we're telling founders, you're going to either be a unicorn or you're going to be small. There's no in between. And what Ande recently said was, you can be in between. I mean, it kind of mimics society, right? We always say if there's a strong middle class, that's powerful. But now what we're recreating in the startup ecosystem is the 1%ers. The 1%ers end up being VC-backed companies. And we're saying, well, the rest of you, if you don't get in down to that route, then sorry. But the issue with that narrative is that there's only 12 spots in the Pistons. Less than 1% of founders will raise venture capital, and that's okay. And what I tell founders is, instead of saying, I'm going to do that funding vehicle to scale because that's the only thing I know of, I think of, let's talk about what your North Star are. What is your North Star? Where do you ultimately want to take this? What's the impact that you want to make? What does it look like? What will you be doing by this year? Do you want to exit it? Do you still want to be running the company? How quickly do you want to exit it? And based on the business model you have, can it exit within this amount of time? Because the reality, and what I like to give founders to think of building into the numbers, and this is where there's only 12 spots in the Pistons, is the reality of raising capital institutional from VCs is that they want to see an exit within 5 to 7 years on average, no more than 10, because investors have a fiduciary responsibility. They have investors called LPs, so they need to get those returns back to their LPs that they promised. So 5 to 7 years as some type of exit, whether it's IPO or acquisition. They want to see 10 to 30 times their money back at least. They want to see 3x growth year over year. That's the gold star. Now, really, when I talk to founders, I'm like, really ask yourself this. There's a difference between just saying, we're going to be $1 billion just to be $1 billion. It's saying, is my company, set up to scale at that level? We've seen the crash and burns before. Nasty Gal was a great example of this. The fab.coms of the world, where they were great businesses, but they just were not structured to go in that path and on that speed.
And that happens, Alex.
And happens.
With the VCs, that money comes in and you lose your runway, everybody. Sometimes a business, for all the right reasons, needs a longer runway to take off.
The structure of, and this is why the perpetuation of raising capital without talking about the why behind it, and is this actually the right model for my business, is that you have all these people wasting time doing that when this should have never been your path in the first place. But that doesn't mean you can't scale, because I truly believe in VC if it's the right vehicle for your business. Most companies, it's not the right vehicle. It can be fabulous if it is, but most companies are not. So that's 99% of companies. Now we have to take a step back and say, where can you go? How can you scale based on the vision you have as the owner of this company, as the entrepreneur, as the founder? What's your vision? What does success look like to you? Now let's back into the resources and vehicles that are going to help you get there so you can scale on your own terms. But I am so tired of seeing founders lose control or lose their companies because they were told to go down a rabbit hole or go down a path that was never meant for them.
Not a fit.
Why? We need to start with the founder. Otherwise, this ecosystem continues to be predatory on the very thing we need. Founders, our visions, we need this for this ecosystem to actually sustain. Without us, it's nothing.
And why is that? That's a really, really good point. But why is that? Because, that's a lot of pressure to have in a founder. You want your business to be able to, self-populate, so to speak, and move forward. But the founders, talk about that, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like goes back to the tech example, right? I love it. It's so funny. I'm like, stop this. Stop pitching me on your AI. I don't really care about your AI. It's like Uber. No one uses Uber and says, oh my God, did you see how great their algorithms worked in this ride? No, they don't care. Consumers don't care about your AI. What they care about are the benefits they get, the results they get from using your product. That's the same thing when it comes to this ecosystem. There are no accountants. There are no lawyers doing deals. There are no VCs making returns without the founders. So it's in our fiduciary responsibility, and it's in our best interest as an ecosystem to make sure that the founder is put first. And again, it mimics so much of what we see in society. If the people, the masses are thriving, if the people are thriving, if we are making sure that they're supported, everyone wins. But right now, founders are literally being treated as the afterthought, and we're losing control. And it's like we're scraping for, and it's like we are in a weird, like surreal reality. I don't even know what it is, but that's our goal, is to reshift and take back that power for the people, for the founder, because none of this matters without your vision, without you understanding where you're going, because each of us has something special. And when founders come to me and they're like, no one's ever done this, and I'm like, yeah, they have, but it's about how you execute. That's what.
Yes, it's been done before, but not by you and not for us. Thank you, Seth.
Yeah.
But another point, Alex, is you said keep everything in context. Folks, really understand the hidden agenda, because right now we have a flurry of a bajillion VCs out there. I don't know what the heck happened. I don't know why they aren't doing angel funds. 50K here, 150K there can really add, incredible value. But no, we've got these VC funds, and every time I turn around, there's another join me in Clubhouse, and there's a flock of people, and they're all jamming on these VCs. Hey, no. they're there to exploit you. Period. End of story, in my humble opinion. Yes, they're there, quote, to help you. And it could be really important, especially if a life bio business, if you have something with a ton of hard assets, energy, storage, things like that. Of course, you're going to need the institutional money. But
most companies.
Yeah, and so there's this perceived flock, lemming, whatever you want to call it, Alex, of everybody running and glopping onto the VCs. What are your thoughts about that?
I think, again, and this is why context matters. In these markets, so we're going through another recession, right? In these markets, investors do really well, and it becomes very predatory on founders. It is not a coincidence that all of these companies have IPO'd recently. DoorDash, Airbnb, all of them. The interesting thing about it is that when you look at DoorDash's model in particular, DoorDash, the founders, I think, each walked away with 4% of their own business. Mind you, was 4% of billions, so that's still a good shit amount of money. But, I think, again, this goes back to creating wealth and ownership. I see so often, I've had even founders challenge me on this, where they're like, oh, it's different, but I'm just like, what are you building this for if it's not to have a stake in it and a say in it, that you can have the impact that you want? And hopefully that's wealth. Hopefully that's creating impact, and it's your vision. And so in these markets, what we're seeing, especially with VC, is they know a lot of founders are hurting. One thing that really stood out to me in the beginning of the pandemic that I remember, it was my 4% aha moment, but in the pandemic, was that 75% of companies on average, this is male or female, only have 27 days of cash on hand on average. That is, when we talk about things, we have all these narratives, like in US culture especially, small businesses are the backbone of the economy. I agree with that. But if we're at that 27 days on average of cash on hand,
no, people.
That's a fragile back. I am scared. I'm scared we put so much pressure and so much weight, yet we're not supporting the very thing that is supposed to be our backbone. And so when I look at these moments, they see founders who, because they haven't focused as much on the business model, and they kept going to go, but they didn't get the model down that can scale in a way that actually moves to profitability at some point.
Right. And sustainability.
And sustainability. So then you have founders who then are giving away chunks of their company because they need that cash at that moment. It's do or die. And I know it because I've been there. I've been there, and it is the shittiest place to be. And that's why I'm so passionate, and why I started Get Shit Done was that I didn't want founders to feel powerless like I did at some points. And also, when I even look at where we're at today and seeing all these companies closing, it, like, you walk down in like my neighborhood in Brooklyn right now, I'm just like, that company shouldn't have had to close. Why aren't we teaching people how to hunt and fish instead of telling them to be dependent on a system? Like, it's in our best interest to make sure that founders are understanding how they can scale on their own terms. And it's a feeding frenzy for VCs right now, because they know that they can get the best terms that are in their best favor, so they have more ownership over those investments. That's problematic.
It's very, and oh my gosh, thank you for being such a powerful voice about this. You're just making my heart sing something fierce. And I sit there, on Twitter, on the LinkedIn, and I just want to pull these founders back and go, wait. Can we just have you focus? I mean, pitch deck's great, but that's helping you to run your business. You understand? Yep. And so, can you please focus on what's it going to take to bring that customer on? What do they want? What is it about your service, your brand, the experience they're going to have with you? And that's what you're doing with Get Shit Done and your Traction Accelerators. And I love that you've gone really deep in helping the female founders so that she doesn't follow this indoctrination and this mythology. And again, yes, maybe you're using Fajas to stop all disease in the world. Okay, yeah, you need to be with the institutional VCs, absolutely. But
VC is a wonderful vehicle if it's the right vehicle for you. I have a lot of friends who are VCs, and I love the work that they're doing. But what I see more than not, because again, it's just numbers, it's data. It's like proven. Most people won't get this type of funding. And it's about, how do we make sure it's in the best interest? And a lot of these conversations are not putting founders at the forefront and saying, how can we support you? It's about sell off your company without thinking about it. And I see this, it's not just in startups, and it's in the music industry. It's in so many industries where the actual talent, the people creating are being preyed upon, and that has to stop. This
Absolutely.
Is economy for founders.
Yep. And here's what's so important too. Folks forget this. And when I earned my MBA, Alex, I went into banking, not because I was a fit, but because I wanted to learn how commercial bankers thought. How did they lend money? And I wanted to do financial analysis on every industry out there. There's this thing called the line of credit. If you're doing traction properly, you have accounts receivable, you have inventory, you can get money for that. You can have to help you with that shortfall for payroll that month while you wait for inventory to turn over, whatever. There are other ways to do it. And if people really wanted to help the middle small business and not have them have such a fragile back, as you said, it would be coming up with, let's give them these lines of credit so that they can keep going.
I'm really happy you brought that up, because I recently posted on our podcast, one of my friends, Whitney Heaton, she is the founder of a company called 19th and Park. She's a Black female founder. It is.
Oh, we lost you, Alex, there. Here she comes. Yes?
Oh, sorry. There was an incoming call.
Yeah.
That's those scams. So yeah.
But she is just a Black female founder.
Female founder, Whitney Heaton, 19th and Park. She scaled her company to 10 million bootstrapped in 5 years. And, again, because the statistics show, yes, women are growing companies at a higher rate than men, especially Black women. Everyone's like, look at her go. But it's also that on average, around 90% of women are producing under 100,000 annually. Only 1.7% get over $1 million. And then Black female founders, it's the worst. Our performance is the worst of our other female counterparts at $24,000 on average on every annually. Yeah. And so for Whitney to have beat so many of those odds is so important, because she even tried to, they were profitable out the gate, right? And she was like, we tried to get, because they have a high overhead business. They tried to go to a bank. They were already doing, I think, $1 million a year, $2 million a year. And they couldn't even get a $50,000 line of credit from banks. So banks have a lot of that's a whole different conversation outside of VCs. Banks need to be acting way more than VCs in this, because more people would be able to get access from a bank, because if we have a business, they're getting our money.
That's
every week, every day. And so they're not participating in a meaningful way. That should have never happened to Whitney.
Never in a million years. No.
Never.
And again, it's because there is the bias as well. So when you go through the credit committee and they're looking at all your numbers, they're going to take into context, but what's her track record? The track record.
And it's just because she could, there's so many people that could have gone in there that look a little different than her and then would have gotten approved. And that's a whole different conversation.
We'll have that another time, Alex. I'm going to bring in Andy Jack. He's my co-host with our pitch event, Founders Live Boston. I agree, AJ. Very passionate convo. Alex is bringing it big time. I'm on the edge of my seat. So, Alex, let's shift for a second into, you've had these years of experience as a founder. You know what it's like when you're sleeping like a baby at night, waking up every 2 hours crying. What have you done to help shift your mindset? What has worked for you when you started to go into founder doubt and you didn't want to stay there? What mindset hack works good for you?
I think there's two things that I've had to learn. The first is, again, I don't like being stuck in my own shit, but I think as founders, what we do is are the ones that keep ourselves in our own shit.
Right.
Because it's like that broken record. When you go down a rabbit hole in something that you don't feel good about, you can stay there, and in your mind helps you, keeps you there. I think the thing that I really had to work on, especially as women, we tend to be nurturers and we don't ask for help as much. So it was stepping out of my shit and saying, I'm going to walk away from this. And I'm also going to go talk to someone about it, whether it's therapy. I think
Oh,
therapy needs to be something you all the time. It be a part of benefits when you get healthcare, in my humble opinion.
oh,
But
absolutely. Whether it's talk time or better help, you
there,
cannot do this alone, folks. If you're doing it alone, you're hurting yourself.
therapy, also other people, like um, other founders that understood my experiences, leaning on them and in eliminating the shame that I felt from feeling like I was failing. But actually, when I got over that fear, going up to people, that was so cathartic for me because I felt so seen and heard. There were so many people who had gone through what I'd gone through, and they're like, oh my God, yes, I've been there, or I am there. It's hard. And just having that acknowledgement, I think for most humans in general, it's a general thing we need, is to feel connection.
Yeah.
And they're so disconnected when we're growing our businesses so much because we get stuck in it so much. So when you're able to step out of it, get support, and even if it's talking to a family member, I think, or friends that might not be in this world, I think I had to realize who I went to for certain areas of support. On the business side, I would get, let's say, a little frustrated. Let's say with my mom at times, and I had to step back and say, you know what, it's not that she doesn't care, it's that she didn't understand my experience. So
Right.
the reaction I was hoping for her, she didn't really know. She didn't know the magnitude because that wasn't her experience. So that's the first thing, is knowing, who is your support. I think your board of advisors, and that doesn't mean for your company, for your personal life, who to go through to on certain things. That's a big thing. I think the other thing that is not put at the forefront as much as possible. It's one thing to say we have to shift our mindset and do these hacks and everything. I think that's great, but sometimes I think you need to give yourself grace and sit with it. Because a lot of times, for example, this morning I woke up and I still kind of feel shitty. I woke up, I don't feel the best, at my best, and I'm not going to force myself to be and put on a performance because that takes so much away from my energy. And I just sat with it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to honor how I'm feeling right now. And I'm going to give myself grace, because sometimes you do. But I think the balancing act is not sitting with it too long. But sometimes you just need to be human and say, I feel shitty, and it's okay to feel shitty. And I'm a testament of this. I woke up this morning, I was like, oh, I texted my best friend. I'm like, I just want to get back in bed. It's like, you know what? Take tomorrow off. And like, that's a good combination of the first tip I gave you. And then sometimes it's not about hacking your way out of it. Sometimes you just need to acknowledge your own humanness and give yourself grace by sitting with it and saying, you know what? I feel tired. I feel stressed. I feel this. Sometimes your heart just needs to say, see me right now. I need to be seen. We're overworked or we're this. And just give yourself that moment, because otherwise we work ourselves into the ground when we don't give ourselves that grace.
Oh my gosh, people, you've got to take that one day and feed yourself in a different way, because the business is very exciting, and you get conditioned to the struggle, to the pain, because you're building resilience, you're building tenacity. Meanwhile, your family members are all like watching you like you're a train wreck about to happen, because it's just out of their realm. They don't understand what you're going through. They don't understand that this is actually fulfilling. Even when you wake up out of bed and you're feeling like crap and you want to crawl back in the covers and, read a book or suck your thumb, whatever. They don't understand that that's just how it's going.
Right.
And part of it. So it's important to have the right people around you too, that say, I see you. And of course you're having a shitty day. Look at everything you've been doing over the last 21 days. What, you think you're an automaton? No. So, and that helps me shift into, and first time founders, I hope you're hearing this. 2 pieces of advice from Alex, so important. You are not alone. As she said, when she was able to share with other founders, they were like, oh yeah, you were there with you. Do that. And that's part of what we do here on the Startup Life Live show, is to have you hear these stories. So you go, all right, Alex is going through, she didn't want to get out of bed today. Okay. It's okay that I don't want to get out of bed. I want to sit with it. Beautiful, Alex. So at the end of the day, this entrepreneurship journey that you have been on your entire life, since you were 19 in Chicago, going to school, how has it served you both professionally and personally?
As an entrepreneur?
Yeah. And as a woman and as a person, as a human, how has this journey served you?
I think for a lot of people, but one of my rallying cries and just values as a person is freedom. And not like the, God bless the 4-hour work weeks and all of that of the world. I think those definitely valid. But, freedom to me doesn't necessarily, mean, oh, I don't have a boss or whatever, because at the end of the day, everyone has a boss. Like I have my boss is my tribe of founders. They're my boss, period. I'm the CEO of the company, but I don't make moves without them. And freedom to me is freedom for our communities, freedom for the people I love and I want to make an impact for. And that's a fewfold. It is the legacy I want to create in my family. That drives me a lot, especially as a Black woman. Black people, our communities in the US, it will take us 200 years to bridge the wealth gap. I want to change that. And I think a lot of that has to do with if we get more people that look like this, that I can go and reinvest back into our community. So that's the first freedom in that. And then also freedom in empowering other women, being able to have the collection of experiences that I have. Like when the what makes you tick as a human, they have like the connection, love, and all those. My top two are, and they're tied. It's literally like spiritual freedom and contribution. And everything I do in my work, if I don't feel like I'm contributing, and if there's not some sense of freedom and, something spiritual there, if I don't feel connected to it, it's not, it doesn't matter to me. So if I'm not making an impact, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. That feeling of being on purpose. And, it's the freedom to be fulfilled, to get up and just feel like, yes. Alex, how can we serve you and your beautiful business Get Shit Done?
Yeah, just head on over to shegetshitdone.com. If you're a woman entrepreneur who, I would say our Superpower Scaling School, which is on the screen right now, that best serves people who, let's say, are not in the position where they have traction yet, or, they're really in the early stages. Our accelerator is really great for women who are like, I have some traction, but now I feel stuck and I want to get to that next level. So if you go to shegetshitdone.com. See, again, I need to sleep today. You can find out all the things we're doing. We have our demo day for our accelerator coming up next week. That's always fun. It's very collaborative. In the audience, you get to see our founders who are pitching. I mean, they're just an incredible thing, acquiring companies. They're, increasing revenues. They're almost at $1 million ARR, so on and so forth. They're closing Series A checks as Black female founders. We serve women across the spectrum from, which is what our team tracks. It's not only just race, it's geography. We don't just serve
age.
Yep. I would say we have 2 women in our current cohort who are in their 50s.
Yeah.
But we've had
never too late, folks.
Yeah. Like that's really important to us. It is how do we create a space for women entrepreneurs who want to get shit done, and how do we serve them in making it happen? And that's not just a 20-something-year-old who's in New York or San Francisco. That's across the board.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to have all the links to Alex's Get Shit Done website. You've got them right here on the ticker tape going across the bottom, but I'll have all the links in the show notes. Excuse me. And Alex, we learned so much from you today. Oh my gosh. Any last thoughts?
Honestly, just traction. Get traction. Y'all focus on traction. I swear you will have so many more options. Traction.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to pop you into the green room, say goodbye to everybody, clear my throat, hopefully. And everyone, I just got so excited and even more impassioned listening to Alex. I hope you did too. Such powerful information. And we really covered a lot of territory, but there was a lot of common theme in the conversation today. So I'm so thrilled that you tuned in and carved out time to up your founder game. And I want to share with you who's coming on next on the Startup Life Live show. I'm live here at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays and Fridays, sharing great conversations like we just had with Alex. And this Friday is one of our faves, Sankeetha Selvarajah, Esquire, founder and CEO of Startup Docs. And I'm very lucky. Sankeetha, I met here in Boston, but she has her law firm, Selvarajah Law, and it's a civil transactional firm located in both Boston and New York. And her marketplace, everybody, has been the startup world. And so she saw the frustration in pulling together all the right documents for startups, putting together the dream team. That's your business banker, insurance broker, your attorney, your CPA. And so she founded Startup Docs, and it's a done with you platform designed to assist founders with cost-effective legal options and all with attorney review. And she's going to be sharing valuable advice for new business owners to make sure they are protected and ready to glow and have all the right things in place for a successful outcome. Got to have things legally buttoned up. So again, thank you for joining me in this delicious conversation with Alex from Get Shit Done and about traction. Here's something I want you to remember. Always remember that you are braver than you believe. Oh, yeah. Stronger than you seem. Mm-hmm. And wicked smarter than you think, as we say here in Boston. So please remember that. I'm excited to see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. And those watching the replay, be sure to let me know in the comment section so I can come by and give you a yoo-hoo. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Wishing you a delicious day wherever you are. Cheers.